Hello, I am petroonishchuk. This video about WebSocket. In this video, I want to create a couple projects. I want to create GoLang WebSocketClient, and also I want to create GoLang WebSocket Server, and also I want to create WebSocketClient by using HTML and JavaScript. And after I create all these projects, I will be using our GoLang WebSocketClient by using JavaScript and HTML, and also I will be using WebSocketClient what I create in my IS project. And also in this video we will create two types of WebSocket server. First type is simply type for connect one WebSocket client and send message only to one WebSocket client. Second type of our WebSocket server is more complex. In second type I will be using pull connection. In second type of WebSocket server I will be connect a couple WebSocket client to our WebSocket server and send to all these clients the same message. First, what I want to create is our GoLang WebSocket client. For this, I want to create a new project, and also I will create a couple files inside this project, a main file and also a file what we call our model. For example, how you can see, I start a new project. Inside the project, I create a couple of files, micro file and also client model.go file. And also, how you can see, inside this project, I will be using Gorilla WebSocket package. Link for this package I put below in description. I'll be using this package for using WebSocket. I will use this package for create our GoLang WebSocket client and also for create our GoLang WebSocket server. Inside the file we have a two structure. First structure is message structure. We will use this message structure for create a message object for take and send message to our WebSocket server and also receive from our WebSocket server. And also I have a structure client. We'll be using the structure client for create our client, and then we'll be using this client for make our WebSocket connection and also for take a message and also for registration our connection and close our connection. Later I show you what all that property will be work in our application. This is our main code file. It now is empty. Next, I want to create file wsclient.go. Inside this file, I want to create a function for work with our GoLang WebSocket server. Inside this file, we will have our function for make our connection and also for take and send message to our GoLang WebSocket server. For example, and now I want to explain what I create. How you can see, I create a new function, Start WebSocketClient. This function places in our WebSocketClient.go file. we're using our package Gorilla WebSocket. We'll be using that package for read and set message by using our WebSocket connection. Next, as you can see, we create a property allMessage. This property will be called client allMessage object, what will be taken from our WebSocket server. Then we create channel for listen if our system is broke. If our system is broke, that means we will be close our connection. Next, we try to make our connection to our WebSocket server. First, we create our URL. How you can see, we will connect to our local host, and also we have our URL. On the start, we have WS. And then we try to make our connection by using our WebSocket package, default deal, and using our URL. Then we check an error. If we don't have an error, we move to the next step. On the next step, we create our client. How you can see, our client have a couple of properties. Message, we create channel for listen a message. Then we take our connection. If we don't have an error, we put this connection to our client, read client, and also close connection. This channel will be using will be make our connection, and also this channel will be using when I want to close our connection. Next, how you can see, we will be close our connection if all action in our function will be completed. Next, we have a function for listen message from our WebSocket server. And also, we will be close if all action in this function will be completed. How you can see, we use a for statement for listen our WebSocket server. Using our client connection and read message. This method will be read message from our WebSocket connection. Then we check an error. If we don't have an error, we move to the next step. We create property a new message, what will be called our new message. Then we try decode our data, what we take from our WebSocket server, and put the data to our new message property. Also, we check an error. If we don't have an error, we put this message to our channel, client message. And next we have a for statement for listen our channel when we want to close our connection or if we have a message from our WebSocket server. In for statement, we want to listen couple of channels. First channel is new message. When we assign a new message to our channel client message, we will read this message. As you can see, we assign this message, then we try to read this message. First, what we do, we append a new message to our old message slide, what we create previously. Then we try to find how many items we have in our old message lines. Then we print this amount, and then we have our if statement. What this if statement means? I'll be using this WebSocket client with WebSocket server is full connection. That means I will connect to our WebSocket server, not only this client, and also IS WebSocket client, and also WebSocket client. That means we will send couple messages. And if through our server we will send couple message, all messages from our server will be sent to all client what we will be connect to our WebSocket server. That means when we send message from our IS WebSocket client, our server takes this message and sends this message to our GoLang WebSocket client. And we take this message and put this message to our all message slide. And we check if amount of our all message divided by 3 equals 0, that means I want to create a new message from our WebSocket client and send this message to our WebSocket server. Later, when I will run our WebSocket server and WebSocket client, I show you how it all works. As you can see, we try to create a new message and then we try to write JSON. That means we try to send this message to our WebSocket server by using our client connection. And also, we check an error. If we have an error, we print this error and return. And also, we have another channel for close our connection. And also, if our system is broke, we also want to close our connection and write message about close our connection. This channel, I don't use it, is this WebSocket client. This channel I will be using when I will be create our WebSocket server. We can delete this property. Okay, I create this WebSocket client to work with our WebSocket server. And then after I create WebSocket server, I will run WebSocket client and connect to our WebSocket server and explain you how it all works. And now I want to create another WebSocket client by using HTML and JavaScript. For example, Now you can see I create WebSocket client by using HTML and JavaScript. First we have our HTML. With HTML we create our input section for input text what we want to send to our WebSocket server, and also we have a button. When we tap to this button, we run function for send message to our WebSocket server. When we tap to this button, we run function send. Run this function. And also we have a section for display message what we take from our WebSocket server. Next we have our section of JavaScript. On script section, first we create our URL for connect to our WebSocket server. Next we create a function. This function will be run when we open our web application. This function first try to connect to our WebSocket server by using WebSocket and our URL. If all successful, we will output in console message what we connect to our WebSocket server. Next function on close. This function will be send message to our WebSocket server. How you can see, we will send this message to our WebSocket server when we close our web application. Using WebSocket set, we will send this date. How you can see, we're using our object. And also we have a function on message. With this function we will listen message what we receive from our WebSocket server and put this message to our section what will be display all message what we take from our WebSocket server in this section. And also we have a function send. With this function we will create our message what we want to send to our WebSocket server and send the message by using our WebSocket connection. We will run this function when we will be typed to button send message. Okay, next project what I want to create is create WebSocket server for one-to-one connection. And after this project, I will create project for create WebSocket server for one-to-many connection. Let's start with first WebSocket server for make one-to-one connection. And now I want to create a project for make this WebSocket server, and also for start I will create a couple files. First I will create a main file, and also I will create a file what will be called our model. For example, now you can see I start a new project. First I want to show you I set up a two package. First package real WebSocket package for work with our WebSocket, and also I set up package for create unique ID for our message. Set up this package from Google, and also we create a file for call our mod. How you can see inside the file we have couple structure. First structure is message structure. This structure holds couple property. We'll be using this message for create message, send and receive message by using our WebSocket server. And also we have a two client structure. I create a two client structure because in this project I will create a two variant of WebSocket server. Short variant of our client without channel, and also more large variant of our client structure with channel. And next I want to create a two file. First file will be called our simply WebSocket server. In first file I will be using this client structure, and also I will be create a second file. The second file we also will be create our WebSocket server. But in second file we will using this client structure, and in second file will be more large, and we will be using channel when we will work with our WebSocket server. For example, And now I want to explain what I create. How you can see, inside our main code file, I'm using handler function for run our server simply function from our WebSocket simple.go. With this function, we will run our WebSocket server, and also we will run our server with value 4000. Let's move to this function. This is our function for create our WebSocket server. This is our file where we create our WebSocket server, and this is our function when we run from our main code file. But before this function, how you can see, we have a property and a function. We create upgrader for define buffer size for read and write. How you can see, we define buffer size for read and write. And also we have a function check original. This function gives us ability to work with WebSocketClient what we create by using JavaScript. And also we have a function upgrade. How you can see, inside the function we're using our upgrader, and also we're using upgrade for make our connection. And on the end, if all successful, we return our connection. If we return our connection, this means we successful connect client to our WebSocket server. Let's move to our function for work with our WebSocket connection. First function, server simple WebSocket. With this function, first we create our connection. How you can see, we're using our upgrade function, what we created previously, to make our connection. If we don't have an error, we move to the next step. On the next step, we create a property, what will be hold a value from our request header. We take value with key, second WebSocket key. For each connection, this value will be different, and we assign this value when we will be create our client. How you can see, when we create our simple client, we're using our ID, we take this ID, and also we take our connection. Next, we print that we successfully connected our WebSocket client to our WebSocket server and print ID for our connection. And on the end, we run function start simple client. How you can see, this function takes parameters client. With this function will be read message what send our WebSocket client to our WebSocket server, and also will be send message to our WebSocket client by using our client connection read.json. In this line of code, we write our message to our WebSocket client who connect to our WebSocket server. First, inside this function, we start to read our message, what we can take from our WebSocket client. How you can see, with the client connect read. That means we'll be wait to new message from our WebSocket client. And when we read our message from our WebSocket client and don't have an error, create new property, new message, and then we try to unmarshal our value, what we take from our client inside this value to our new message property. Then we check an error. If we don't have an error, we move to the next step. On the next step, we create a new message with value ID. We create a unique ID by using package from Google. Next, we assign body for our message by using new message body, sender by using new message sender, and also sender ID we using client ID, because for each connection, this client ID will be unique. And then, if we successfully create our message, we try to send this message by using our client.connect.write.json message. And if we don't have an error, that means we successfully send our message. And this message must present in our WebSocket client. Okay, I create simple WebSocket server. Next, I want to create more complex WebSocket server. In more complex WebSocket server, we will create this client, and also we'll be using channel for message for registration our connection, and also for close our connection we also will be using channel. And now I will be create a new file, and inside that file I will be create function for work with our more complex WebSocket server. For example, And now I want to explain what I create. I create a new file, websocketComplex.go. Inside the file, I create function for create our WebSocket server. This is more complex WebSocket server because our client holds ID, connection, and also message and registration our client, and also for close connection. For these three properties, we create a channel. We'll be using this channel for take message and also for send message to our WebSocket client. But this is also connection one-to-one. This means when we connect a two WebSocket client to this WebSocket server and send message from one WebSocket client to this WebSocket server, our message don't be sent to our another WebSocket client. For send message to all WebSocket clients would connect to our WebSocket server, we must use pull connection. I'll be using pull connection on the next project. Next project will be more complex, but now I want to explain this project. Inside our main content view, I use a handler function for server our complex WebSocket. How you can see, we will use this function. This function I comment. This is our previously example. Let's move to this function. This is our function, server complex WebSocket. This function takes responsive writer and also request. Next, how you can see, we try to make our connection by using upgrader. We use this function from our previously file. We use upgrader for this file, and also we can move this property and this function to a new file for more visible. And also our previous example, WebSocket simple.go will be also have access to this property and function because our property and function placed on the same package. You can see I move our property and function from our WebSocket simple.go, but our previous example also will be have access to this property and function because our property and function placed on the same package, main package. I move this property and function to this file for more visible. Next, we use our function upgrader. Our function takes responsive writer and request, and we try to make our connection. If we're successful and we don't have an error, we move to the next step. We take value from our request header, get value from key, second WebSocket key. This value will be different for each connection. And then, how you can see, we start to create our client. In this example, our client have more property. We also have property register connection, and also we have a property close connection. For this, we're using our channel, and also our property ID and connection. Next, we run our function start run. We run this function asynchronously because this function will be run on the background thread. This function will be wait a message what will be sent through our channel, and after take this message, our function will be send this message to our WebSocket client. How you can see, we run this function. This is our function start run. Inside this function, we use it for statement and seller. Next, we have couple cases. First case, when we make registration our client. How you can see, when we take message, what we make connection from our WebSocket client and WebSocket server. We create this message, connection succeeds, and send this message to our channel, client, register, client. That means we send this message to this channel, and this channel send this message to this property. And then we will use this property next in our function. How you can see, we use this property for send this message by using our client connection write.json. That means we will send message what we create in previously function. How you can see, we create message. We set unique ID for each message, body, connect succeed, and also sender is empty, and sender ID we select client ID. Client ID is value from our request header. How you can see, we take value from our key, second WebSocket key, and inside this value to our client ID. And then we're using this value. And when we have an error, we print an error. And next case, for take message from our WebSocket client, and also when we close our connection. But before I explain these two cases, we move to previously function. After we run this function, start write, and create message what we successfully connect our WebSocket client to our WebSocket server, we run our function start read. This function will be read function what we send from our WebSocket client to our WebSocket server. This is our function. After all action in this function will be completed, we'll be close our connection. But next, inside this function, we're using for statement. That means we'll be run this for statement all time. Will be all time wait message from our WebSocket client. How we can see, we're using our connection read message. And when we don't have an error, we move to the next step. That means we take message from our WebSocket client, then we try to unmarshal our message. That means we try to decode our message, what we take from our WebSocket client, and inside this message to our new message property. And when we successfully decode our message to our new message property, we try to send this message to our WebSocket client. How you can see, we create new message with value, unique ID for each message, body, new message body, sender, new message sender, because you will send message with value sender from our WebSocket client. And for sender ID, we put our client ID. And on the end, we send message to our channel. Our channel is the second case. On the second case, how you can see, when we take this message from our channel, we try to write this message by using client connection project 1. That means we try to send this message to our WebSocket client. And when we have an error, we print an error and return. And also, inside this function, when we have an error with read message and we quit from our for statement, will be run our function for close our connection. When we close our connection, we set client ID of client what connection will be closed. And then, when we set this message, we take this message in our third case, close message. We take this message and print close client ID, because we sent our client ID, and print value of client ID. Client ID is our value from our request header. Again, all short. We create our property upgrader and function upgrade for make our connection. Next, through our server, we will run our function server complex WebSocket. With this function, we create our client, and then we start our function start write. This function will be wait for message from our function start read. Our function start write will be wait message. For example, new message from our WebSocket client or message when we close our connection, and message when we make registration of our client. This is our two functions. This function for write, that means this function wait our new message and write this message to our WebSocket client. This message to read. This message wait a new message from our WebSocket client. And now I want to run this WebSocket server and also our iOS WebSocket client and also our web WebSocket client and show you how it all works. And now you can see I run our iOS WebSocket client. I also open our web WebSocket client, what we create by using JavaScript, and also I run our WebSocket server. And now I try to connect to our WebSocket server by using our iOS WebSocket client. Now to connect to our WebSocket server, we must tap to this button. When I tap to this button, I take a message. This message unique ID for this message, sender. When we make registration, our sender is empty. Sender ID is ID for this specific connection, and also our body connection succeed. And now I try to send a message to our WebSocket server. Tap to send this message, and now you can see we have this message. When we tap to send this message, first we send this message to our WebSocket server, and then from our WebSocket server we send this message to our WebSocket client and display this message in our list. We have ID, our unique ID for each message, sender, iOS app, this is our value. Sender ID is ID of our connection. How you can see, our connection ID is the same, and also we have a body first message. That means our function works correct. And now I try to connect our web application. When we reload our page, we try to connect to our WebSocket server. How you can see, we have a message. Connection succeeds. And also we have sender ID. Sender ID is unique ID of our connection. For this connection, we have this ID. For this connection, we have this ID. And now I try to send this message, hello WebSocket, to our WebSocket server. And then our WebSocket server will send this message to our WebSocket client. For example, now you can see sender web, this is our message, body, hello WebSocket, and also sender ID the same, because this is one connection. When we try to send another message, we have our second message. Sender ID the same. ID for each message is different. And also, how you can see, in this time we connect our web WebSocket client and also iOS WebSocket client to our WebSocket server. But when we send message from our WebSocket client to our WebSocket server, for example, from iOS application, our message don't display in our web application. Because, how I said previously, this is one-to-one connection. And also, when we send message from our web application, our message don't display in our iOS application. And now, if you want send message, for example, from our iOS application and also display this message in our web application and also in our iOS application, we must use a pull connection. This means we'll be take this message and send this message to each connection what connect to our WebSocket server. To create this connection, I must create a new project. And next, when I create our project with pull connection and we can send our message to all our WebSocket clients, we also will be testing our GoLang WebSocket client. How you can see in this example, we don't using our GoLang WebSocket client because our GoLang WebSocket client will be sent message after she accept couple message from our WebSocket server. And now I want to start create a new project, and also inside our project for start I will create our main Go file and also file what will be called our model. For example, and now you can see I start a new project. Inside the project I create a two new files. First file is our main Go file. This time it's empty. And also I create WebSocket model.go file. And also when I start this project I set up a two package. First package a real WebSocket package for work with WebSocket, and also I install package for create unique ID for each message. I set up this package. Inside our WebSocket model.go file we have a couple structure. First structure is message for create our message object. How we can see our message structure, like in previous example, we have couple property ID, body, sender and sender ID. It's similar like in previous example. And also we create a client, but in this example our client have ID, connection, and also we have a pool. And next we create our pool structure for create our pool object. With our pool object will be put together all our clients what we connect to our WebSocket server. How you can see our pool structure have couple properties. We have property register for. With this property will be sent message when we make a register of our client in our WebSocket server. On register when our client disconnect from our WebSocket server. Client's property. This client's property holds maps of client object. We'll be using this client's property for go through all clients what we connect to our WebSocket server and send message to each client what we connect to our WebSocket server. How you can see, this is map of client object. If our client is connect, our value will be true. And broadcast property for take message what we take from our WebSocket client and send through our WebSocket server to all our WebSocket clients. Okay, this is our WebSocket model. Next, I want to create file websocket.go. And inside this file, we will create function for work with our WebSocket. So this file we will have function for read our message and also for send our message to all clients what we connect to our WebSocket server. And now I create this file and then I try to explain what I create. For example, And now I want to explain what I create. First, as you can see, I create file websocketServerOneToManyPool. First, inside this file, we have our property upgrader and also function upgrade for create our WebSocket connection. Next, we have a function newPool. With this function, we will create a new pool. We will create a new pool each time when we will be run our WebSocket server. And then, each time when we will be connect a new client to our WebSocket server, we will be add a new client to our client's map inside our pool. Next, we have a two function. Start write. With this function, we will write our message to all WebSocket client what we will be connect to our WebSocket server. As you can see, will be sent message when we will be make our registration, on registration, and also when we will be take message from our WebSocket client. Second function is start read. With this function, we will be read all message what will be sent from our WebSocket client to our WebSocket server. As you can see, we all time will be read all message what we will take from our WebSocket client. And on the end, we have function perform WebSocket. This function takes three parameters: our pool, responsive writer, and also HTTP request. As you can see, inside this function, first we try to create our connection by using our upgrade function. If all successful, we move to the next step. In this example, I try to show you where we take our value with key, second WebSocket key. We take this value from our header. For example, I create this for range through all value inside our request header, and we can see our WebSocket key. Next, we create our client. Our client takes ID, this is our ID, with value what we take from our header, connection, what we create previously, and also pool, what we put in our function where we will be run our function perform WebSocket. And if we successful create our client, we send our client to our pool register. That means we successful connect our client to our WebSocket server. And next, we start our function start read. With this function, as I said previously, we start to wait a new message from our WebSocket client what we connect to our WebSocket server. And on the end, we have a function setup WebSocket application. Inside this function, first we create our pool, and next we run our function start write. With this function, we will wait message for send this message to our WebSocket client. And also, we use this function handle function for work with our WebSocket server. As you can see, this function take responsive writer and request and also run our function perform WebSocket. This function takes three parameters: pool, writer, and request. This is our function. How you can see, we run this function, pool, write, and request. Now move to our main Go file. Inside our main Go file, how you can see, we run our server, but before we run our server, we run our function setup WebSocket app. And now let's see step by step how it all works. When we run our Go application, first we run our function setup WebSocket app. And then we start to run our HTTP server. Let's move to this function. As you can see, this function first what we run when we run our Go application. Inside this function, first we create our pool, and then we start to write. That means start to write, we wait message from our pool. When we registration a new connection, on registration our new connection, and also when we take a new message from our WebSocket client. And after we run our start write function, how you can see, we run that function on background thread. We start to using our handle function, what run our function perform WebSocket, who take three parameters: pool, what we create previously, writer, responsive writer from our HTTP server, and request from our HTTP server. Let's move to this function. This is our function, perform WebSocket. This is our parameter, what we take. With this function, we create our connection for our WebSocket client. Then we take our second WebSocket key for connection, what we create from our WebSocket client, and create our client. And then when we create our client, this means we successfully create our connection between WebSocket client and WebSocket server. Because in this, when we create connection and don't have an error, that means we successfully create our connection. And after we successfully connect our WebSocket client to our WebSocket server, we send this client to our channel pull register. Let's move to this function. How we can see, when we send message to this channel, in this case we take this message. And next we add our client to all clients what hold our pool. Without this line of code, we can send message to all WebSocket clients what we connect to our WebSocket server. When we connect one client, this print will be displayed 1. When we connect 3 clients, that means this print will be displayed size of connect pool 3. Next we create property what hold our client ID. Client ID is unique ID for each connection what we create between each WebSocket client and WebSocket server. And then we go through all clients what hold our pool client, create new method for each client what hold our pool client map, and send this message to all clients what hold our pool client map. That means we send message to all clients what connect to our WebSocket server. Our message means that we connect a new user with ID, new client ID. If we have an error, we print an error and return. This is what this line of code. And then we start to read all messages from our WebSocket client if he sends message to our WebSocket server. Move to this function. Now we can see this function read. We start to read, and when we take a new message and we don't have an error, we create input message. That means we decode our data, what we take from our connection, and then how we can see, we try to read message what sends our WebSocket client to our WebSocket server. And then when we take data what sends our WebSocket client, we try to unmarshal, decode our data, and put the data in our input message option. And if all successful, we create a new message with value, unique ID for each message, body, input message body, what we take from our WebSocket client, sender, what we take from our WebSocket client, sender ID, client ID. Client ID will be unique for each connection will hold our WebSocket server. And if we successfully create our message, we send this message to our channel client pull broadcast. Let's move to this channel. This channel releases inside our function start write. How you can see, we send value to this channel and we take this message. Then after we take this message, we try to send this message to all WebSocket clients what we hold in our pool client what connect to our WebSocket server. How you can see, we go through all clients by using range pool client, and then we try to send our message by using client connect write JSON and message. This means we'll be send message to each connection will hold our pool client map. If we have an error, we print an error. And also we use time sleep 1 second before we send each message. And also when we will have an error for read message in our start read function and run our function, therefore that means we will run this function when all action will be completed inside this function. That means we will close our connection. We set message to our client pool on register, and then we close our connection. Client connection close. Let's move to this channel. How you can see, when we close connection for specific client and send message to our channel, we take this message. This is client what we close. We delete this client from our map or hold our pool client. Then we print user what we disconnect. Next we print type of pool connection. After we delete client from our pool client, then we create variables what hold client ID what we delete. And next we go through all WebSocket client what connect to our WebSocket server, create message for each client what our user disconnect, sender ID. This means our message will be displayed user with ID what delete will be disconnect, and we send this message to each WebSocket client what connect to our WebSocket server. This means our message will be hold information, unique ID, body, user disconnect, sender empty, and sender ID will be delete ID. It's like this method send user what we delete previously, and then we try to send this message. If we don't have an error, that means we successful write this message. If we have an error, we print an error and return. This is what more complex project where we create our WebSocket server. And now I want to show you how it all works. For example, and now I show you what I will be using for display how it all works. First we have our WebSocket server what I create to make our pool connection. Next, we have our WebSocketClient, what I create with our GoLang project. Next is our iOS WebSocketClient and our simulator. And also we have our WebSocketClient, what I create by using HTML and JavaScript. For this WebSocketClient, we'll be using our browser. As you can see, we'll be using this browser for connect to our WebSocket server with full connection. And now I run all our projects. For example, first I must run our WebSocket server to connect our WebSocket client, what I create by using HTML and JavaScript. To connect our WebSocket client, we must reload our web page. As you can see, when we reload our page, we take our message from our WebSocket server with ID, unique ID for each message, body, join a new user, and also this is our sender ID. This will be unique sender ID for this connection between WebSocket client and our WebSocket server. This unique ID for this WebSocket client what I create with HTML and JavaScript. Next, try to connect our iOS WebSocket client. For connect, I must tap this button. And now, when I tap to connect to our WebSocket server, our WebSocket server, if connect successful, must also send message what I successful connect our WebSocket client, what I create is our iOS device. That means this WebSocket client, WebSocket client, must accept also message about this new WebSocket client, what we connect to our WebSocket server. For example, how you can see, when you tap to connect to our WebSocket server, we successful connect, and our WebSocket server sends message about successful connect to our simulator, WebSocket client, iOS project. How you can see, sender, body, join a new user, sender ID. Sender ID is unique ID for this connection. How you can see, this is unique ID for this connection, this is unique ID for iOS connection. Next, we have also WebSocket client, what I create with GoLang project. For example, now you can see, when we run our WebSocket client, we successfully connect to our WebSocket server. And we also have a new user what connect to our WebSocket server. Also different ID, accept our web IP and also accept our iOS device. Our iOS device have two messages, not three, because first WebSocket client what we connect to our WebSocket server was this WebSocket client. And also with our WebSocket client what I create with our GoLang language, we will be sent message to our WebSocket server when number of message will take our WebSocket client divide by 3 and last will be 0. Later I show you when our WebSocket client will be sent a message. And now let's try and send couple messages. As you can see, this is our server. When we run the server, it goes through all value for each connection, request header, we have this value, header, and as you can see, we have second WebSocket key value. This value we use it for each connection, because this unique value for each connection between WebSocket server and WebSocket client. Okay, let's move and send couple messages. Let's start first message from our iOS device. As you can see, I create message text from iOS. Sender will be iPhone 14 Pro. And when I tap send this message, we send this message to our WebSocket server, and our WebSocket server sends this message to our client what connect to our WebSocket server, our iOS client, web client, and also GoLang client. For example, how you can see, when I tap, we take this message. ID, unique message, text body, text from iOS, sender, iPhone 14, and sender ID. Sender ID is unique ID for this connection. How you can see, this is our ID for connection, and also this is our ID when we connect our iOS project to our WebSocket server. When we tap again, we also will have the same ID. How you can see, sender ID the same. And now we have a new message. Server body 3 device 3 equal 0. That means the sender our Go client. How I said previously, our Go client will be send message when count of message will take our GoLang client divide by 3 and at last we will have 0. How you can see, we have a 3 message and we send our message. Sender ID when we connect our GoLang client. How you can see, now count of message 4. Next time we send message when our count of message will be 6. Now try to send message from our web IP. How you can see, I tap to send message and we send this message. ID, hello WebSocketClient, this text, sender web, sender ID, tag I, our first ID, because we first connect our WebSocketClient. And also we have this message in our iOS device. How you can see, we have this message, hello WebSocket. The same message, the same sender ID, and also we have this message here. And now, how you can see, we take this message also through our GoLang WebSocketClient and our method. See, this means our WebSocketClient send message. And we have this message, body 63 equals 0, sender, GoClient, sender ID, and that's our ID, this ID, the same. Another message, we take this message here, here, and here. Now we have it. What? Our message, how you can see, what our message, iOS 14 Pro, testing from iOS 14. When we send message from our iOS device, we don't put this message that is array himself. Before our message display in this list, we send this message to our WebSocket server, and then our WebSocket server sends all message to our all WebSocket client but connect to our WebSocket server. Because when we create this message and send to our WebSocket server, we don't have unique ID. Our unique ID we place it to our message in our WebSocket server. Now you can see this is our text field for creating new message. For connect, we run our function connect. For send message, we use this function. Let's move to this function. When we tap button send message, how you can see, we create our new message, then we try to encode our data to data, then we convert the data to string, and then we send the data to our WebSocket server. Send the string data to our WebSocket server. Through this function send, we put this text, send, string, our text. Now let's move to our WebSocket server. This is our WebSocket server. This is our function, what read all messages from our WebSocket client. When we read this message, what we send from our iOS device, first we decoded this data by using Marshall, and then by using this data, what we decoded to our input message property, create a new message. How you can see, we take message from our iOS project. After we take this message, we create a new message. But when we create a new message, we assign our message unique ID. How you can see, because when we create message in our iOS device, we don't set ID for our message. Here we set our new unique ID. For body, we use body what we send from our iOS device, and also sender from our iOS device, sender ID is client ID. Client ID is unique ID for each connection between WebSocket client and WebSocket, and send that message to our channel. Let's move to this channel. This channel takes this message, and then we try to use this message for send this message to each client but hold our pool. How you can see, run pool client and try to send this message. Client can't write this message. And then after we send this message by using our client connection, that means we send this message to all clients what connect to our WebSocket server. Our web client, iOS client, GoLang client. Let's move to our iOS client. We send this message and our iOS client on receive function will be take message from our WebSocket server. When we take this message and if all successful, we take this message and we check if our message is text. Then we convert our text to data, and then we decode our data to object what we will be displayed in our iOS application. How you can see, we decode this data, and then by using dispatch queue, because how you can see, when we put this data in our list, will be change our view. Change our view, we only must on the main thread. And if all successful, we decode our data, we put this data to our all message array and display the data in our application. With our client, all similar. This is function for read our message. This is for send message or take our channel. Each time when we send message from our iOS device or web application, our GoLang WebSocketClient takes this message after this message sent from our WebSocket server. He takes this message and then decodes this message to our new message property. And if all successful, we put this message to our client message. How you can see, this channel takes this message and then we using this message. But first we put this message to our slides of all message object. Then we check how many messages we have in our all message array. Because we don't want each time when our server sends our message to our client and we take this message and send again to server, and then server again to client, client to server, and the circle is not so interesting. Because I create this if number of message divided 3 equals 0. That means will be sent message if our value will be 3, 6, 9, and if our value, for example, 3 or 6 or 9, we create a message with value, count of value, what we create, and send this message, go client. And then we send this message by using write.json object. And after we write this message, we display this message in our IS project and web application. In our app application, that's similar. This is our HTML object. This is our JavaScript. Connect to WebSocket. We run this function when we reload our web application. This means when we reload our page. This function reads all messages what we take from our WebSocket server. This function runs when we close our application. This function runs when we close our connection. This function runs when we open our connection. And this function we run when we want to send our message to our WebSocket server. How we can see, we take message from our text field, create object, and send this object by using our WebSocket connection set JSON, our object, and display this value in our web page. Let's start. I send couple messages. How you can see, 1, 2, 3, 4. And now we have 9 number. That means our WebSocket client with GoLang client send our message 9 or 11, 12. That means we must send message. And now we have 15. That means we send our message from our GoLang client. And also we have all this message in our IS device. How you can see, this is our all message. On the end we have our message from our GoLang client. And also I want to show you how we can reconnect our WebSocket client to our WebSocket server. For example, let's run all again. How you can see, we connect our IS project, web project, and also GoLang project. And now, how you can see, because we connect on the another order, we have a 3 message in our GoLang project. And our GoLang WebSocket client send this message. We can send this message from web, and we have this message in our IS project. We send a couple messages from our IS project. How you can see, 4, 2, our GoLang client send message, 3, and again our GoLang client send message. And now I want to show you how we can reconnect our WebSocket client. As you can see, when we send message from our IS project, this is our connection from our IS WebSocket client. This is when we connect for IS project for GoLang. And now I clean this list and disconnect. How you can see, when you tap to disconnect, we have a user disconnect sender, our ID for connection, what we make between our IS project and WebSocket server. How you can see, we send this message EOS. And now when we try to connect, we connect to our WebSocket server, and also we have a new ID for our connection. And now when I try to send message to our WebSocket server, our ID connection will be RS. How you can see, this line we connect our IS project, send message RS, send message RS. But here our message RS, another ID. This before reconnected, this is after reconnect. And our GoLang client have the same sender ID. We also can reconnect our WebSocket client. How you can see, we reload and we can see we joined with sender ID this value. This means when we will send value from our WebSocket client, our sender ID will be this value. And also our Go client send message because of this statement. This new message, sender web, sender ID when we connect it. And also this sender we can see here. We can also reconnect our GoLang. How we can see, user disconnect, GoLang client, connect again. This is sender ID for our GoLang client. Send couple messages from our IS device. How you can see, our GoLang client again send message, sender ID, and also sender ID when we connect. Number is 3 because previously number is big, but when we reload our WebSocket client, our slides of all message would hold our property in our GoLang WebSocket client start from 0. As you can see, when we disconnect our IS project and also our GoLang client, WebSocket client, our size of connection will 1 because we have only one connection, our WebSocket client. When we close our server, we reload, we don't have any message because we close our WebSocket server. As you can see, our connection was 2. After we disconnect one client, our connection 1. Okay, this is the end of my video. In this video, I tried to create a couple projects for create a couple WebSocket client and also for create a couple WebSocket server. On the last, I create WebSocket server for using pull connection. With our pull connection, we can take message from one WebSocket client what connect to our WebSocket server and send this message to all WebSocket clients what connect to our WebSocket server. In this video, I create WebSocket client by using IS project, GoLang project, and also Web project. GoLang project and also project by using HTML and JavaScript. All link to package what I using in my video and also link to another source what I using in my project I put below in description. And also you can find all completed project in my Git repository and also all video will be placed in my YouTube channel. All my video where I create our WebSocket client and also WebSocket server will be separate in 2 parts. In first part will be video where I create our WebSocket client by using IS project. And second part I will be posted video where I create our WebSocket client with our GoLang project and also HTML and JavaScript. And also in second part I put video where I create our WebSocket server for one-to-one connection and also for our pull connection where we can send message to all WebSocket clients what connect to our WebSocket server. This is the end. Thank you for watching.